We're sponsored by Shalom Fogel, Nishmas Yaakov Zev ben Yud Arya, Rivka Bas Yaakov Yosef, Tivy Miriam Bas Gad, Yosef ben Sim and Yaakov Zev, for the Full Shalom of Moshe Arya ben Miriam, and for a great Shidduch for Chaya Tivya Bas Shoshana Gittel by Baruch Ian, Lili Nishmas Yaakov Chaim ben Abba, Esther Bas Yona, Avram ben Shmuel HaKohen, the Full Shalom for Liba Bas Anya, by A.B. Spry. We're sponsored for the spiritual, emotional, and physical protection for Yeshua Menachem Mendel ben Bela Shendel Rivka. We're sponsored by Mark Frankel, loving memory of Yisrael Tzvi ben Chaim Yeshua Falek, and by Berish Gesem and Lefur Shalema for Shoshana Basadina Chana. We learned for Chavar Adaf, Aaron ben Sarah, Nachman Yaakov ben Sarah, that they should have a Lefur Shalema b'Seich Sha'achela Yisrael. We are holding by the new Mishnah on the bottom of Tzadik Daled Amud Beis. New Mishnah on the bottom of Tzadik Daled Amud Beis. Beged shiyotzu chutz l'kloim. Okay, here you have a big dekuna that blood sprayed on, and remember that we have to clean it bakodesh, right? And what happened was you took it outside. So you took it outside, nichnes, you got to bring it back in, and you have to wash it in the Makom Kodesh. Now that's obvious. I mean, it says you should wash it in Makom Kodesh. So if you took it out, of course you have to bring it back in. It's the next halacha that makes it interesting. Nitma chutz l'klam. If it became tamei outside, now when it comes tamei outside, what are you going to do? You can't bring in the beged when it's tamei, and therefore, koro, you tear it in order to take away the shame beged, and then once you take away the shame beged, the tumah goes off, and then nichnas mechabse b'makom kadosh. Then you bring it in and you wash it b'makom kadosh. Now the Gemara is going to right away ask, well, if you tear it, then it's not a beged anymore, and the mitzvah is to wash the beged. So the Gemara is going to answer that. And the Gemara now says the same thing. We know that if the earthenware vessel absorbs absorption from the kachim, you got to break it, right? Because the absorption becomes eventually nicer, which is an isakaris, and there's no way to purge it from an earthenware vessel. So you have to break it b'makom kadosh. So again, the same thing. If the earthenware vessel that absorption was taken out of the azara, nichnas, you bring it back in, v'shayvrei, makom kadosh, and you break it in a makom kadosh. Now, what happens if it becomes tamei? Nitma chutz l'klam. If it becomes tamei outside of the azara, you can't bring it in tamei. No way, no tamei into the azara. Noikvai, you pierce it in order to take away its shame keli, you perforate it, and then v'nichnas v'shayvrei b'makom kadosh, and then you bring it back in and break it in the holy place. Then the same thing is a klei nechoshes, a copper keli, which you're supposed to purge b'makom kadosh, sheyatzu chutz l'klam, that you took outside, nichnas, you bring it back in, u'morkei v'shayvrei, you purge it. You purge it and you rinse it b'makom kadosh. Nitma chutz l'klam, if it became tamei outside and that you can't bring it in tamei, so again, poichzai, you make an opening, you break it open so that it loses its status of a keli and the tumah goes off, and then v'nichnas u'morkei v'shaytfa, you bring it in, you purge it and you rinse it b'makom kadosh. So right away the Gemara is going to ask thrice the question, if you tear it, then the tumah goes off, but it's not a beged anymore, so you're not fulfilling the mitzvah of rinsing a beged. If you perforate it, it's not a keli anymore, then you're not fulfilling the mitzvah of breaking a klei cheres. If you break it open and it's not a keli anymore, and the tumah goes off, you're not fulfilling the mitzvah of purging and rinsing the keli. So the Gemara is going to have to do some little bit of surgical Talmudic scalpel over here in order how to get it that the tumah goes off, but it still should have a status of a beged. It still should have a status of a keli. Danny, Freilich and Chanukah. Danny, we got to get you maybe to drink a coffee. So right away, the Gemara gets to this question. Maskevla Ravina asks, Koiroi, you tear it in order that the tumah should go off, but wait a second. If you tore it, beged amarachmana. It says beged, v'lav beged hu. Says the Gemara, you know what? You tear it along the majority, but the mishayer be kedei mapiris. But you leave enough to use as a turban, and therefore, since you left enough intact to use as a turban, it still has a status of a beged, even though the original tumah goes off because you tore it along the majority. Says Gemara, Ini, is that so? When does it help to tear? In order that the tumah should go off. That's only if you don't allow the remainder to be used for a turban. But if you left enough that it could be used as a turban, it's considered to be still attached, and the tumah will remain. So when the tumah remains, you're not allowed to bring it in the azara. Says Gemara, no, that's only a chumrah midrabanan. That's only a rabbinical chumrah. And they didn't make that rabbinical, when the Rabbanan said something, we have a klal, it's called Haim Amru v'Haim Amru. They said, and they said. They said that it would be considered tamei if there's enough for a turban, but they didn't say it in a case where it would block you from fulfilling the mitzvah of washing out a blood stain. There they didn't say that it should be tamei. Klei cheres.
Once that Rabbi Weiss, if they wash it out, now what do they do with the baguette?
Then they can use it.
But it's only enough for a turban. I mean, what are they going to use?
No, they could repair it.
They can repair the whole baguette.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now.
The same with the clay cheres and the thing?
No, the clay cheres breaks and absorbs in the ground.
Right. And the clay should
that they could repair.
Thank you.
Now, so clay cheres sheyotza, top line of Daf Tzadikei Amud Aleph, clay cheres sheyotza, clay cheres that was taken out. So again, the Gemara says, if you perforated it, keli amarachmana. The Torah says that you have to break a keli, v'lav keli, if you perforate it. It says the Gemara, shenikev b'shorish cotton. You perforated it just the amount of a small root, so therefore it's enough for the tumah to go off, but it's not enough to take away the status of a keli. Klei nechoshes, metal keli, peichsa, you break it open. Says the Gemara, v'ha lav keli hu, it's not a keli. So here the Gemara gives a different answer. Gemara says, you're right. It ceases it to be a keli, you bring it in. After you bring it in, the ratzif meratzif, you bang it together, and then it becomes a keli again, and then you purge it and rinse it. Now, Amrei Shlokish, me'il shenitma, the plot thickens over here. We know the me'il is that long turquoise cloak that the Kohen Gadol wears that had the bells and the pomegranates on the bottom. If it has blood sprayed on it and it becomes tamei, now we got a double problem. You can't tear it because the Torah says about the me'il lo yikareya, you're not allowed to tear it. So now what do? Now you're really in for a problem. So the Gemara says, no problem. Machnisai b'pachis mishalosh al shalosh. You bring it in amounts of less than 3 by 3 finger breaths. An amount of less than 3 by 3 finger breaths doesn't have tumah. So you bring it in piece by piece in amount of 3 by 3 finger breadths to clean the blood stain, because you can't tear it, mishum shenema lo yikareya. Says the Gemara, I don't understand, why does it have to be so small, 3 by 3 finger breadths? You know, the idea of 3 by 3 finger breadths is that it's fit to be a patch. But we'll learn that thick or even soft woolen materials can't be used as a patch. So then it could be even less than 3 by 3 tefachim. And that's what the Gemara asks. Moisiv Rav Ada bar Ava ha'oven, thick woolen substance, or rachim, or soft, it can't be used as a patch, so ein be'em mishum shalosh shal shalosh. There's no tumah of 3 by 3 finger breadths. Says Gemara, yeah, that's when it's by itself. But when it's attached to a whole beged, agav avien, agav the entire beged, chashive, it would be chashiv even if it's 3 by 3, and therefore it has to be less than 3 by 3. But now we got a different problem. The problem we have now is that the washing that we have to do is not simply washing it in water. The Torah says that there's a halachic procedure. This halachic procedure is both by washing out blood and also by washing a beged that has tsaras. You have to use, this is also a method to check if dam is dam nidus, is blood of nidus, and we use one after another a specific system of cleansers. It goes as follows. The first ingredient we use is roik tofel, is tasteless saliva. That means saliva of a person that didn't eat that day. The second is mei grisen, water of grits, water that grits was boiled in. The third is mei raglayim, urine. The fourth is neser, niter. The fifth is boris, it's a type of soap. The sixth is kamunya, which Rashi says we don't know what kamunya is. And the seventh is ashleg, which is a pearl derivative. So those are the 7 ingredients. What's the problem? The problem is you're not allowed to bring. We know if you daven svard, you say it every day in Ein Kelikenu, in the Ketairis, if you say the Ketairis, that you can't bring mei raglayim into the Mikdash. So if you have to wash it, but you're not allowed to bring urine into the Mikdash. And that's what the Gemara says, well, boy, shiva samam on him. You need to use the 7 detergents. Dam Rav Nachman, Dam Rav Bavua. Dam chatas, the blood of a chatas. Umaris negaim, and an appearance of leprosy on a beged. Tzrichen shivas samamonim. You need the application of the 7 detergents. But the problem is that the third detergent is mei raglayim. V'tanya ela she'ei machnisim mei raglayim l'mikdash. That's why you don't use it in the treatment of the ketairis. Says the Gemara, no problem. We don't bring it in pure. We mix it with one of the other ingredients. You're not only not allowed to bring it in pure. You mix it with the other 7 ingredients, and you apply them all at once. You can't do that. If you do it out of order, you do the ashleg first, for example, or you do all 7 at the same time, it's no good. It has to be one, first the roik tofel, then the mei grisen, then the mei raglayim, the chitem and the mivlagu b'hadei chadmes amamonim. Even though you can't do them all seven at one time, but maybe you could mix the urine with one of the other ones. You can mix it with the mei grisen. It says not that way. Shalosh pamim, you have to scrub it 3 times, b'kol echad ve'echad, with each one individually. Tanan, we learned. Says the Gemara, yes, but there's another halacha that you don't know, and it's interesting. I've learned this many times, and I don't know if it says this anywhere else. When you do each of the 7 detergents, each one has to be accompanied by reik tafel, by tasteless saliva. So the megrisin has to be accompanied by the reik tafel. The niter has to be accompanied by reik tafel. The boris, the soap, has to be accompanied by reik tafel. El the mivlu b'reik tafel, each one is accompanied with reik tafel. The amrei shlakish, reik tafel, the tasteless saliva, tzarich sheyayim kol echad ve'echad, has to accompany each one. Oh, if that's the case, so then the urine is not pure, and that's why you're allowed to bring it in. Okay.
Can I ask something? The me'il, we said you have to bring it in less than shalish. You fold it? How do you get it less than shalish without tearing it?
You pull each part.
Pull?
Yeah. Oh, in other words, wherever the blood is, you just bring that little piece
that
inside.
Little piece inside.
Right.
Okay, I didn't understand. Okay, thank you.
Now, the din of breaking the clay cheres, or purging the metal vessel, is both true whether you cooked in it, whether you poured into it boiling gravy. So, echad shebishal bay, whether you cooked in it, the echad she'ira l'saychai roiseach, or you poured into it boiling liquid. It's true echad kachi hakachim, if you cooked in it chatas and ashim, or the echad kachim kalim, or you cooked in it a shlamim, or a taida, or bechar, or ma'isa behema. Tu'unin Marika Ushtifa, by metal it would need purged and rinsed, and by clay cheres you would have to break it. Reb Shimon says, Kachim Kalim ain't Tu'unin Marika Ushtifa. It doesn't need the halakhic purging and rinsing. Now, here the Rishonim all say, and we're going to learn about this on the next daf, that of course you're going to have to get out the absorption. Because if shlamim, after 2 days and 1 night, it becomes nicer, which is an isikaris. So we're going to have to get out the blia. But the Torah's method of marika and shtifa, Reb Shimon holds, is only by kachi. Tan Rabbanan, asher tevushal boy, which you cooked in it. I only know if you cooked in it the kachin. If you pour boiling gravy into it, minayin. Talmud Laimar, there's an extra word. The pasuk says, "Asher tevushel bo yishaver." That's the lashon of the pasuk. It's extra because it could have just said, "Im beklei cheres tevashel yishaver." Asher tevushal boy, that's superfluous, so that comes to say, however it's inside it, even if you pour it in, it needs to be purged. Asher tevushal boy, if it's in it, yishaver. That's by clay cheres, and by a metal vessel, it would need to be purged and rinsed. Now here the Gemara declares an interesting shaila. An oven which is open from the top. So let's say Yitzi, our resident Kayin, puts a spit of chatas into the interior of the oven. Now we're not worried about the drippings. There's of course going to be drippings, but we're not worried about the drippings because there's coals. So the drippings falls on the coals and gets burnt out. So there's no absorption. But you did cook it inside. Will you need to break it? Let's see the Gemara inside. That's a very interesting shayla. Boy Rami Bachama tolu ba'aver taner mao. If you suspend a spit of a roast in the interior of the oven, but it doesn't touch the sides of the oven, do we say abishulu beluahu de kapad rachmana? We're only concerned if there's cooking and absorption. Now here there's no absorption because it didn't touch the sides of the wall and the drippings got burnt by the coals. Oh Dilma abishul beloy belua amara. The pasuk says asher tavushal by. The mere fact that you cooked it inside necessitates that you should have to break it. Amarava tajma echad shebishal by ve'echad she'iru l'saycha reiseach. Whether you cooked or whether you poured in hot gravy. So you see, you don't have to cook. So the Gemara says, Roseach belua beloy bishul loy kamabaylan. Hot that's absorbed without cooking, that's not our question. We know if there's absorption, you have to break it. Ki kamabaylan bishul beloy bilua mai. We want to know what happens if you cook, but it doesn't absorb. So the Gemara says, well, Tajma, the Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba Ba'avua, Tana shel mikdash shel matchus. The oven, now an oven is a very big thing. We can't go breaking all the ovens. So Tana shel mikdash shel matchus. The Tana of the base of Mikdash was made out of metal, so that you don't have to break it all the time. You could just purge it. But v'isol kedaitach bishul b'loy bilua loy kapid. But if you could lower it in, and as long as it doesn't touch, it's not a problem. So why did they have to make it out of metal? Ni avid shel cheres. So the Gemara says, well, maybe if we were only talking about roasting a roast, it wouldn't be a problem. But we also baked in it the remnants of the mincha. The mincha is also kache. And in those days, they baked in an oven by attaching it to the side walls. And that's why it couldn't be earthenware. Says the Gemara, Kavan Ikish Yari Minchas, Menachas, the remnants of the meal offerings after the Kmitza, Dafiyos and Betana, that's baked in the oven. The Ikabishal Bilua and his absorption because they attached it to the wall, therefore Avdin and Shalmatkas. Now, I better welcome people before, I don't know what's happening over here. This shir is going too fast. I know I kept you waiting too long tonight. I'm sorry. Eddie Chazan, Dr. Guy, Dr. Block, Yisrael Fisher, Yaakov Warman. Who is that? That's probably Menachem Umansky. Irving Fishbaum, Yitzi Fuchs, Mo Kushner, Barry Cement, Nachman Chapler, Michal, Rabbi Kranz, Yitzi Muller, Dr. Udell, Baruch Ian, Moshe Lehman, Avram Rezepkowitz, Naftali Jablin, Reb Elia Yafi, Ilya Shutman, Abe Arbach. Here in Shul we have Chaim Kramer, Michal Avram, Danny Vogel, Ruvain Shannon. Boy, tonight we have a real Hanukkah shortage. We're missing a lot of people tonight. It's interesting. I'm going to talk about it in the for the Shabbos table. There's a Chassam Sofer. The Chassam Sofer says that there's a bigger Yetzer Hara not to learn on Hanukkah than on regular days. It's part of the Ha'oros of Hanukkah is it was a time Lashkicham Toresecho Lavira Mechuk Eretzenecha. And we have to be careful that we don't lose out from our learning on Hanukkah. So the Gemara now says as follows: Ha'u tanura de'atku batichaya. There was an oven that they smeared on the oven schmaltz. Schmaltz was very popular. They smeared on the oven schmaltz. Now, when you do that, the bread that you bake in that oven is schmaltzy bread, But you can't do that. You can't have fleishige bread because we're afraid then somebody's going to spread butter on it. or cream cheese, or make a grilled cheese sandwich.
I once remember seeing a hot dog bun with a OED on it.
Yeah, so that's a big problem. So tanura, the atkubot tichaya, osra rabba bar ahaloi, lemeichla lerifta la'olam. He said bread baked in that oven is always forbidden. Why? Because there's no way to purge the absorption of the schmaltz from the oven. So bread baked in that oven will always be forbidden, even though it's not forbidden, it's fleishige bread, but we don't have fleishige bread because we're afraid that you might use it with milchiks. Va'afilu b'milcha, you're not allowed to even eat it with salt. Dilma asila meichla b'kutcha, because you might come to eat it with mayonnaise, and one of the primary ingredients in the olden days in mayonnaise was whey of milk. So it was milchiks. Says the Gemara, Meisvei, ein loshin eso isa b'chalav. You can't knead dough with milk. Now that would make it pretty tasty, right? Nice creamy dough with milk. You can't knead the dough with milk. V'emlosh, and if you do, kalapas kula asura, all that bread is forbidden, even to have it with salt. Mipnei hergal aveira, you might make a pastrami sandwich. Kiyotzebay, ain't toshin es hataner ba'alya. You can't coat the oven with fat, with the fat of the tail. The im tosh, and if you coat the oven with the fat of a tail, kolapas kula asura, all the bread that you bake in that oven is forbidden, achi yasik es hataner, until you reheat the oven. So the Gemara says, oh, but if you reheat the oven, we said before, it's Rabbi Bar Eloi said that it's usher to use that oven forever. Here it says that once you reheat it, you could use it. So to Yufta, the Rabbi Bar Eloi, to Yufta, it's a refutation of Rabbi Bar Eloi. Amalei Ravina Rav Ashi, v'chi me'achar di toisiv Rabbi Bar Eloi. After Rabbi Bar Eloi was refuted, then Amayom Arav Kederois bePesach, that earthenware pots on Pesach Yishaberu. Why do you have to break it? All you have to do is reheat it, right? And you could use it. Amalei Rav Mukilo Ahi B'Shel Matkas. Rav says that the case over there by the Alya, where it says that when you coat it with fat, you could reheat it and then use it, it's talking about a metal one. Oh, a metal one you could purge. Says or else we could answer, no, it was talking about earthenware. But you see, the oven, you reheat from the inside. The pot, you heat from the outside. Heating it from the outside doesn't get out all the absorption. Says the oven you heat on the inside, that will get out the absorption. The pot you only heat from the outside. Says so then heat the pot from the inside. Then heat the pot from the inside. Then heat the pot from the inside. Says we're afraid people won't want to do that because they'll be afraid they'll break the pot. Chayes alayu de metabre, people won't do it. They'll do it from the outside because they're afraid to break it, and therefore that's why it's not allowed. Okay, that's even though we got to a very late start, but we did it, and now we're going to have for the Shabbos table segment. Remember, Matzah Shabbos Shir is back at 8 o'clock.